Hello Internet, in today's video is going to be another book opinion, those videos in which I tell you my opinion on a book. And today's book is going to be The Language of Thorns, Midnight Tales and Dangerous Magic by Bardugo. So you might recognize this one or not if you're familiar with the book community, which I'm assuming you are because you somehow found my channel. So Bardugo, pretty famous author now after her Grisha trilogy, after Six of Crows, and she continues once again in the grishverse, and this is a collection of stories that she wrote that are meant to be used as the sort of fairy tales and stories that are told to the different people in the grishverse based on the different countries. So if you look at the map of the grishverse, there's like 6 different little states and nations, and we get at least one fairy tale from each nation, and it has the air of that nation, right? Once you read all the books, you kind of get a feel for the people. So these are like the premise of, these are the fairy tales that the kids of the grishverse would have learned at one point in time or another. So it was really good. First, I love the concept. I love fairy tales. I love little short stories when they're in the form of fairy tales. I'm not that good with anthologies, but I am really in love with fairy tales and just the whole fairy tale concept and everything to do with fairy tales. So we're gonna start this off by saying that I think this is the best Bardugo book I have ever read. The only book that I haven't read at the time that I'm making this is Wonder Woman Warbringer, but every book that's related to the grishverse I've read and I have completed. So I think that this is definitely her most successful and her best book, and is definitely one that I think if you want to get into Bardugo, you should buy, because she does her best work in this book. And we're going to start that off because one of the biggest problems I have with Bardugo is the fact that she's really bad at endings. Not like Stephen King's standard of bad at endings, but she has a tendency to disappoint her readers when it comes to endings. And I didn't really understand why. Like, it frustrated me. I started thinking about it, and I think this is my theory as to why Bardugo does such a bad job with endings and why people come out of it sort of, that was okay, and sort of disappointed and disgruntled. Not very angry and mad, but just like disgruntled over the whole ending, and like their nose kind of scrunches up. And this is the reason. So I think with Bardugo's ending, she forces it too much. She sets up the story where she wants it to be grim and dark and like gritty, and like we're during war, and so people are suffering and dying, or we're at a heist and people are like criminals, so there's gonna be some sort of malevolent activity going on. And when it comes to the ending, she forces that sort of gritty nature so hard that she ends up making decisions that seem really forced and that have no relevance to the story at all, where it wasn't necessary. They weren't necessary gritty details where she had to do this for the sake of the story. It just felt like she was like, well, I've been building up this pretty gritty dark tale, so I have to do A, B, C, or D to make it even darker and grittier. You know, I just gotta do that thing. So it's not appreciated, right? Nobody likes a senseless death in a book. Nobody likes a senseless action in a book. Nobody likes senseless suffering in a book. There is no point to them. If you are using a story and you have a character that causes those things, that's fine, because there is a purpose to it. What I mean by senseless action is you could have literally taken that piece out of the story and it would have been the exact same story. There is no difference. That plot point serves no purpose other than the author put it in. And Bardugo tends to do that right at the end point, but it kind of changes like the conclusion, but overall the whole feel of the story wouldn't have been changed if she just decided not to do that thing. So spoiler warning, because I want to give you a very clear example, so this is going to be a spoiler warning, alright? If you haven't read The Crooked Kingdom, if you haven't read Six of Crows, and if you don't want to be spoiled at all for me to give an example, then go away. I'm going to like wave my hand when it's ready again, but I just want you guys to know before you guys start coming at me in the comments. So here's your last warning. So the biggest point that I want to make for like why she does senseless things that have no prevalence for the story at all is in Crooked Kingdom, where she kills Matthias, and it just comes as a shock and a surprise because you're just like, wait, what? And he's dead. Like, that's it, he's gone. And I'm like, really? What purpose did that serve? Because throughout that whole book, I knew that these characters probably wouldn't get the picture perfect happy ending. I knew that this perfect pairing off probably wouldn't work. I knew that Inju and Kaz would probably have problems in their relationships because they have a really messed up relationship. Like, the best hopeful pair in this was the gunslinger kid and then the little curly kid, the merchant's son. Like, they had the best relationship and the best chance of having a happy relationship. Lo and behold, they end up being the best couple in the end, that have the happiest time by the end of the book. But it just was disappointing that to deal with one of the troubling natures that she set up the story where it was going to be really hard for these people to work out their differences, to come together, to change like this history. She just decided to kill off one of the characters, and there was literally no point. Like, this kid's death comes from nowhere, and I was like really surprised because I was like, wait, what purpose did that hold? And I kept thinking when we were coming to the end of that book, how is Leigh Bardugo going to resolve this? Because Nina has to go back to her country, and people aren't going to like that she has a witch hunter with her that has been responsible for murdering and capturing plenty of the people like her. And he doesn't want to go. He wants to run off somewhere, but Nina feels responsible to go. And you know their relationship wasn't going to work out the way that they wanted. And they were going to have struggles and hard times and all of that. And it was going to be a really tough decision. And I just hated that instead of having that conversation of what sort of tough decision they were going to make if they wanted their relationship to work, Leigh Bardugo was like, that's too hard. Pew pew, you're dead. All right, we're good. And it was no point. Like, there was no point in Matthias's death. Did it have any relevance to the story? No, he died after they won. I would have understood if he there was in the middle of the battle, but he died after they won. So, all that being said about Leigh Bardugo's other work, welcome back, everyone else. But all that being said about Leigh Bardugo's other work, I think this piece of artwork here is a lot better because every time in these fairy tales they have that dark, gritty feel, and there are points where the author is basically telling you, she's like, these stories aren't going to end the way that you want. They're not going to end pretty and happy with the prince marrying the princess and everything fine and dandy the way that you traditionally accept. There's going to be some dark, horrible things that are going to happen. Don't expect a light, happy outcome, but at the end of the day, we're going to be satisfied. And that's exactly what we do. We get to plot points and turns where things happen to these characters that you're like, why did that horrible thing have to happen? But at the same time, you appreciate it because it becomes a turning point in this character's story that puts emphasis and meaning that makes the overall story good, rather than just being like, I'm throwing this in to make it darker and grittier. There's an actual purpose to these plot points and these twists and turns and like different things showing up and showing you a darker view of the story than you had originally intended. And there is such great value in that. And I just love how in this book and in these series of stories, every single time she went above and beyond to add a dark turn and a dark twist and a darker take to the story than maybe the reader had ever expected. That serves a purpose in the story. It doesn't seem like it's just shoved in there for the sake of being dark and gritty because we set it up to be a dark and gritty grim fairy tale. No, each and every point in which something horrible happens to these characters or something that makes you sad and just makes your heart hurt, those served a purpose, like an actual plot-worthy purpose to teach you something, to show you something, to develop the character in the story, where before in Leigh Bardugo's endings it has never done that, and it has always been a point where you could just be like, I swear I could take out that little piece and the story would remain the same. The characters would remain the same. Nothing would really change, and it would have been a better story if you didn't try to force a dark and gritty nature. So I understand this book opinion was me more on venting on my frustrations with Leigh Bardugo as a writer when it comes to her endings, but I just want to end it with, if you really do like the grishverse, or if you are interested in the grishverse and you like grim fairy tales or any of those things, I would say give this a shot, because it definitely shows improvement in Leigh Bardugo's writing, and I'm hoping that she'll take this and learn that you don't have to force dark, grim things. They can come naturally if you make your story fit that. Like, you don't have to force it. You don't have to kill off someone or do something weird to a character for the sake of your story just because you feel like it probably should be there. There should be a purpose to it. And if you can make a purpose to it, the readers will be sad, but they'll also be satisfied and happy with the direction that you took. So, Language of Thorns is a great, great, great fairy tale collection. I love how she retells some of them. I love her take on them, and I think they're really, really beautiful. If you like dark and grim fairy tales, pick this up. You don't have to know anything about the grishverse to enjoy these. You just have to have a love of fairy tales and that dark, grim nature that some of them hold, and you'll love this book. Comment down below if you have had any problems with Leigh Bardugo's endings. I've seen a couple people tend to point that out, but like, are any of you satisfied with the endings of her series? Like, I don't know. Like, majority that I hear are people who are just a little disgruntled with her endings. But if you're perfectly happy, comment down below. Let me know, is that you? If you're not, then comment down below as well. I like when my thoughts are reflected in other people and other people's thoughts are reflected in me. So if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue to see more, click all those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.